Right, I guess we'll get stuck in. Hi, everybody. My name is Becky Neal. I'm the head of OCR for British Obstacle Sports. That means I chair the technical committee. Uh, we help inform things like the selection policy, which is one of the things we're going to be talking about today. And British Obstacle Sports is the national governing body, and we have a national team that covers elite, age group, para and junior athletes. Competing specifically at the European Championships, which this year is in Portugal in June, and the World Championships, which this year is in Sweden in September. So really this call is about what do you need to know, what you don't know that you don't know, where to find the very specific forms and details and information that you might need if you want to represent Team GBR, Team Great Britain, at the European Championships for the 100 meters, the 3K, the standard distance, which is also often 12K, or compete in a team event in Portugal or Sweden. Also, there is a separate event for the 400 meters happening in Ireland in July. Hi, everybody, you're just joining. We're recording, just so you know. And we're just going to start with a bit of an overview. I've introduced who I am. Last year I was also the team captain, so I was at the event helping out with the athletes understand all the information that they needed to know there. Dawn, who are you?
Who am I? So I'm Dawn, national team manager, and I'm really responsible for the kind of the background workings, really. So the background admin, making sure that everybody's team applications are in, that they're valid, that your membership's valid, that you have the right qualifications in place, and then being the point of contact to liaise between the sort of the European or the world governing bodies in terms of the actual competition and competition day. And it's probably worth pointing out that what I don't get involved with is I don't get involved with any of the selection. So any of the selection committee, any of the decisions based around particular athletes and their qualifications, that doesn't sit with me. So although I'm the liaison between the two areas, I don't get involved with any of the decision-making processes. So I think that's probably quite important to just kind of get that information across, really, that, yeah, I'm an admin and I'm there to support and help manage and help guide, but I don't make any decisions in terms of who gets to go where and what. And a lot of my work is done sort of 12 months prior to where we are now in terms of getting the information up and getting it all available and in place so that the technical committees and the selection committees have got everything that they need to know when they need to know it. And then really going forwards, as we get closer to race day, you know, just alleviating any problems, any questions, any concerns. Or just, you know, ticking the boxes of information. Many of you are sort of seasoned athletes now, so you know it. And I think what I'd say to the new people coming on board is don't be afraid to ask the questions. Sometimes you get a little embarrassed and think, oh, I can't ask that question. It's a really, really silly question. Do you know what? People have probably asked it before. And I think this is my third international competition doing this role now. So yeah, I'm well versed. All my stuff's in order. So I'm all taken care of. So anything that you need help with, just fire it at me and I can help as best as I can.
Great, thank you, Dawn. And also on the call we have James Burton. You feel free to say hi, James, and say who you are, and then I can carry on.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, so I'm chair of British Obstacle Sports. Nice to kind of have so many people on, and I think Dawn doesn't really do herself justice when she refers to herself of handling the admin. It's such a critical role that Dawn plays, and they're all very grateful for the work that she does for the national team. And yeah, Becky as well as team captain last year. So yeah, I sit on the technical committee, the OCR technical committee, as well as chair in British Obstacle Sports and various other committees. But today I'm just here listening. I actually can only make about 20 minutes. I will drop off at some point, but I just wanted to say hi to everyone who doesn't know me, hi to everyone who does know me. And yeah, as Dawn and Becky say, please do ask questions. There's a little bit of curse of knowledge sometimes because a lot of the people within British Obstacle Sports have been to a lot of international events and competitions. So if you're new to the sport, please do ask the questions. So that'd be helpful for us to learn and make sure people coming into the sport have the necessary information. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. I think it'll be helpful to show you where some things are. So one of the things that Dawn mentioned already was about qualifying. So things are just loading on the screen, hopefully. So one of the main things we do is, like Dawn said, is do a lot of that stuff beforehand. So you're not sort of looking at your performance at an international event or anything necessarily. In fact, we've launched our selection policy in August last year. So we had the last World Championships in Costa Rica in August last year, and immediately after that we released the selection policy information. That's a very thorough document that you can find on the website. I'll show you how to get to that in a second. And that's the thing that you need to kind of try and understand today, get your head around. You can read the full thing in detail. It covers the World Championships, the European Championships, including the 400, and all the different distances as well. Also inside that policy is the links to the application form. So I'm going to show you a couple of those things now. So this is important if you're going to this competition. So if you're on the British Obstacle Sports website, feel free to kind of follow along now if this is the first time you've kind of thought about this. Along the top, we've got the competitions section. So there's UK competitions, there's different series that we run as well, which isn't the focus of today's call. But under there, you'll find the European and the World Championships, which just has a few key details. They'll have their own websites. They might not be fully complete yet, and more information will be added to those event websites. But we have some of the key stuff on our website as well. And that's where you can find the selection policy, which looks a little bit like this right now. It's just recently been updated to include some extra things, and you can see which things have been added at the very end of the policy as well. So if I just open that up for us, so we've gone under there. This is what it looks like. But if this is you're starting out, if you haven't made an application yet, the first thing you want to do is read it and try and get your head around it and understand when the competitions are. And then if you're going to be making an application to be part of the British national team to represent GBR across any of these distances, then there is an application form to fill out. That is linked from here. So it's on near on like the third page or something. Here we go. We got two different application forms. So there's one for adults and one for under 18s. Okay, so you need to complete the form. If you click on the link from the policy, it will take you to the form. And I'm just going to highlight one of the key parts to this, which really helps us swiftly process the application, essentially. One of the things it will ask you on here is to, I won't be able to fill out all the things and move on to the next stage. But it's going to be asking you for a code to prove that you've completed an event, which will be one of the events that we've talked about in the policy. So, for example, you might have run at a Spartan race and qualified, or run at a Nuts Challenge race, or run at a 100-meter race somewhere, which is covered in our selection policy on the website, and also the kind of the timelines of the things that you need to do are listed in this policy. So, for example, on the European Championships one, just up here, we've got some details of times for the 100 meters, for example. So when you're making the application, you're going to be asked to provide a code to highlight which event you have qualified at. So you'll be able to check right now whether or not you have actually already completed an event which has achieved your qualification and to what division. So this is just an example of what that looks like. So this spreadsheet is viewable by anybody linking from the policy. Along the bottom, there's different tabs for different events, distances. So you're looking for, if you want to compete in the Sun course, then you would look for that, find an event and your name, where you think that you may have qualified. You can search for your name anywhere to see if there is an event that perhaps you did, but you didn't realize you'd managed to gain a qualification. And then importantly, you're looking for the reference number on the left here, and using that to include in your actual application form. So the one that I think I placed it already. So from the policy, go to the application form and then into that reference. And there'll be a different reference per event as well. So you'll need one for the 3K and another one for the 12K. That's because only certain distance events will qualify you for, the representing distance. Does that make sense? Can you explain that clearer, Dawn? Do you want to reiterate anything?
That's about clear. I think the only thing I would state is, because we have 2 different championships, is when you're looking for those qualification codes, just to have a little scan across and just make sure that your qualification codes, if you want to attend both events, covers both events. Some of the very early qualifiers, when you qualify earlier on in the year, might only qualify you for the European Championships, might not qualify you for the Worlds, whereas the ones much later in the year will qualify you for both. So just have a little double check, because what will happen is, if you apply for both but you only put in a code that covers the Europeans, there are some like 700 codes on that form. So when I go in, I will literally just go and look at the very specific code that you provided. So there are some circumstances where people have inadvertently been marked as not qualified because the code that they've supplied doesn't cover the qualification for both events. So yeah, just double check that over.
Cool. And so the reason I've just gone through that in detail is because the actual deadline for that is the 31st of January. That's in 2 days' time. Okay. So if you haven't made an application to be part of the British national team just yet, this is sort of the first deadline for, particularly when we're looking for making sure we've got all the automatic qualifications addressed, and making offers to athletes so they can go ahead and book the event. There is a prize rise coming up for the European Championships at the end of this month. There's also a kit deadline, which we can talk about in a moment in more detail. But there are still further opportunities to qualify, and we would encourage people to do that, to kind of demonstrate that you are working towards meeting the standards to represent Great Britain, I suppose, whether that's age group or elite in the specific distance. Anything to add on that?
I was just going to say, Becky, on that one, just to clarify, there's some deadlines around elite selection and also for consideration for the national team races, and that's the key thing to make sure your deadline, your application's in by 31st. But obviously, if you apply later or you qualify later, you'll still be able to submit an application.
Yeah, April time. So the national team race, if you don't know what that is yet, that's going to be a collaborative event at the European Championships, with a number of different athletes running together to complete the obstacle course, which in the past has involved all the athletes completing some obstacles on their own in succession. So you might follow each other along some monkey bars, but also doing some teamwork-based obstacles on the course where you need to use all of your the team members to complete them. In the past, we've had a men's national team, women's national team, a mixed national team, and a para-national team. These things haven't been confirmed for this year in terms of who we're going to have on which team and which teams are going to be happening, which races are going to be. So you need to make sure that you indicate if you would like to be considered for the national team on the application form at this stage by the 31st of January. 100 meters. I think there's a couple of 100-meter athletes on this call. There's a limited number of positions available for the 100 meters. Most people have already applied for that. We had the national championships back in December, and so there was automatic qualifications or selections. So the top athletes being awarded those positions already, and the age groups are split slightly differently compared to other age groups in 3K and 12K distances. So there's sort of slightly more, what's the word, need to get the application in on that one. Okay, any questions where the point we're at the moment, or do we want to move on to uniform? Just looking in the chat. So Q&A, hopefully this is, but sometimes you don't know which questions to ask. So I thought I'd just show you some things anyway. Okay. This, let me just make sure it's up to date. So we have racewear, which are those blue, bright blue with red tops that you can see. So you can compete in a t-shirt, a vest, or a crop top. And to match that, we would ask that you'd wear black bottoms, or there are also now shorts and leggings available that match the tops. And we have some full uniform guidelines about how you should consider arm sleeves, socks, lengths of socks, colours of socks, all those things. And those have been confirmed and agreed with World Obstacle, who have requirements for the countries to have consistency and representation to the right level. So as well as the racewear, we also have leisure wear, which is more of the navy blue items that you can see. And they're for you to decide to wear outside of sort of the formal requirements. So not at ceremonies and not when you're racing, but whilst you're hanging around the championship events, for example. Do I have the guidelines? Do you have the guidelines there, Dawn? You shared them in the WhatsApp groups, haven't you?
Yeah, they've been in the WhatsApp groups. Probably the only thing to worth noting on the kit is personal sponsors. So we are permitted by World Obstacle to have a personal sponsor either on the left leg or the right leg of the otherwise plain black pair of shorts or leggings. But any of the national kits, so if you were to have the compression shorts, for example, we wouldn't then allow to have a personal sponsor with on those. And we'd also ask that if you do have personal sponsors on shorts, that they are then not worn on the podium. And also that any personal sponsors are just not pre-authorized, but just agreed by emailing the national team email address beforehand, just to make sure that there isn't anything that has either a conflict of interest or something that wouldn't necessarily represent the organization in the best of light. So like, for example, let's say your local pub wanted to sponsor your 12-year-old child. We wouldn't allow that to happen, just from an appropriate standpoint.
Thank you, Dawn. And there's also naming requirements. So we put capital letters, surname on adult vests and crop tops. I think on the crop tops it actually comes on the front, doesn't it? Not on the back. So when you are making your order, there's a separate kind of box where you would type exactly what you want to be written on the back, which we ask is your surname. And that will be presented in capital letters. Yes, that's correct. This is all detailed in this document here, the national guidelines. So that's what you are on the podium. Same thing that you race in. You can have more than one top. You can have a t-shirt and a vest and a crop top. So they have. There's an opening ceremony and a closing ceremony at these events where we sort of do a parade of nations. They expect all the athletes to be there for those. And there's also award ceremonies each day after the kind of the conclusion of the main events. The only event that has sort of heats and finals over different days is usually the 100 meters. So there's racewear, which is the important stuff that you need to prioritize. The minimum that you really need is a top. You could use your own black shorts and you don't have to buy the leisure wear. So really the thing to prioritize is one of those bright blue tops that you could wear to race in and to go to the ceremonies in, or even be on the stage gaining an award.
One other thing to add as well, just because we had some confusion in Costa Rica, is that certainly for the 100 meters, your qualification rounds are still classed as race day, so you are expected to still wear the national uniform for your qualifying. You don't have to wear the national uniform on your practice day. So on the Wednesday, which is your practice session, if you want to just wear different t-shirts, I think that's absolutely fine. But when it comes to laying down your qualification times from Thursday onwards, it would be national uniform.
So the lead time then for some of these is quite long. So when ordering, I'll go just back to the pictures. When ordering, so right, Dawn, do you want to explain right now the deadlines and the difference between leisure and
yeah, absolutely. So so currently it's Chinese New Year, and as with most clothing items, they come from China. So the factory's closed the next 2 weeks, which is why we had to get the order window in nice and early. So we've got a slightly longer lead time. I think we're expecting, I'm just looking at my calendar, I think we're expecting the team orders to be shipped around about the 7th of April. So they still should be here well in advance of when we actually need them from in June. And what we did recommend is that you order your leisure wear and your racewear separately. And the reason we say that is because otherwise what they will do is they will hold all of your leisure wear. So if you order your leisure wear and your team wear on the same order, they will hold all of your leisure wear until your team items come. So to kind of, a lot of people did this last time because obviously it's a £7.20 delivery charge, which was quite a lot of money. So we lumbered them all together. Whereas what Sarages have done for us this time is they've given us that code to give us free delivery, which then just makes it a lot easier for people to be able to split their orders. If you have, for some reason, or if you have inadvertently ordered everything in one order, I think there probably is a possibility for you to contact Sarages by email and say, actually, can you split the order? Can you apply the free delivery code, which is BOSS, and get that order split? I can't make any changes to any orders I see on there. So if you message me and say, look, is there any chance we can split the orders? Get my leisure stuff sent out earlier. I can't make any changes to any of your orders that have been put in. I put a little message out earlier to say that I have been through and just sanity checked every order that has been placed on the online system that I have access to. And there are some shirts that are lowercase, there are some shirts that are first name, and there are some shirts that have no name. So please, 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 just don't go over, just double check the order that you've put in. In particular, if you put in 2 or 3 items of the same item, for example, in maybe a variety of sizes or quantity of 2 or just multiples, just double check that you have put your personalization on every single item that is asked for, and you should be able to find that on your order confirmations. And anything that doesn't look quite right, just send an email to Sarages with your order number as a reference, and specifically put out what you need them to change, and ideally get that done before the 31st of January. What happened last time is we had some people panic that they'd missed the deadline, and then we're phoning Sarages 2 or 3 days later. Sarages were really nice to them and sort of said, yeah, okay, we'll make the change. And actually what ended up happening is it held everybody else's orders up. So we've got like 2 days. So please, 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 if you've got any amendments, anything that you need to get ordered, get it done within the next 2 days so that we don't then hold everything up a little bit further.
I did have another point or 2 points about the uniform really quickly. There might be some questions on sizing, so feel free to ask a question about that if so. But I remember when I was doing the ordering, I would edit the order, even if I'd already written the name on the shirt, and it would disappear. So try and check that last before you press the kind of submit button. Sizing wise, the leisure wear, I followed the guidelines, the sizing guidelines, and it was way too small for me. It came up suggesting I was a child. I'm 33, but I thought I followed the rules. I have got the units right. I'm good at science, and it was way too small for me. I did think it seemed like I was ordering a small size, but it was too small. And then I sized up. I ordered another one, and it's still too tight on my forearms and my arms in particular. It's fine on my body, but it's very tight on my arms. So if you feel like maybe you've got a lot of strength, then the leisure like jacket, the quarter zip, I find comes up small. I think the t-shirts are quite big. We've actually altered the back of the racer back to make it fit women a bit better. That was some feedback from last year. And of course, offered the crop top. I think Dawn, you answered a question earlier. I think the crop top does fit kind of true to size. I had one that was a bit taller, one that was kind of the better size, and the smaller one did feel like it was tight on my ribs, and you don't really want anything affecting your breathing, really. So I think that's okay, but if in doubt, go up in most of these things. Yes. Okay. You've answered the question on the chat. Yep. So you don't need to register tickets for. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, well, I do have some other things for people who are potentially totally new to doing an international event. Like I said at the start, there'll be more specific. We'll get a rule book which includes the obstacles and the rules for each individual obstacle, much closer to the event time, and that will be published on the event website. But there are some sort of general rules that happen with OCR. I'll just show you a few in case you haven't seen them before. So there's different types of obstacles, especially over the 12K and the 3K events. Unless it's a team race, then it is an individual race. And if you're competing at elite or age group level, so anyone except open, basically, then you're expected to follow the rules to the same degree. So things like some obstacles may be what's called mandatory. It means you have to do them. So that would be usually things like walls or strength obstacles. And there'll be other obstacles where you have one attempt, a suspension obstacle, so a hanging obstacle, and you'll have wristbands on your arm, usually 3. That means you have 2 lives to be able to not complete the obstacle first time, or 2 different obstacles first time. So if I come up to a rig, I have one go, I come off of the rig, I don't complete it by hitting the bell at the end usually. Then the official there would cut the wristband off your wrist and you would continue the race. So you couldn't try again. You would continue on to make sure that's still a flowing race and there's no cues or anything like that. People's hands don't rip and stuff like that. And then you'd carry on, complete some more obstacles. Perhaps you come up against another one that's also difficult. You've got now 2 wristbands on your wrist. If you failed another one, then you'd have another wristband cut. And you continue on with your race, completing the mandatory obstacles. Some do allow second attempts, for example, sometimes balances, but not always. So it's important to read the rule book beforehand. You can't have any help from each other or any spectators. You can't necessarily accept any things from spectators like food or gloves or anything. The only people who can do that are like race staff, and there'll be things like water on the course, or you can carry it yourself. You can't use chalk currently at these events either. They do check people's hands on the start line. I saw an elite woman have a band cut on the start line because she was trying to cheat once before. So they will check those things. You have to be careful with the obstacles too. Like you can't throw down some of the heavier obstacles and stuff like that. And you can't kind of use things that you're not supposed to use, like for example, the structure to gain an advantage to complete the obstacle. So if you follow those rules, but you still now only got 1 band left, you could complete the rest of the race and go through the finish line. Before you go through the finish line, you might complete 2 penalties to recover the 2 wristbands that you've lost. So that might be carrying something around a short course. Then you would regain your 2 wristbands from the marshals there, and then you would go through the finish now with 3 wristbands, 1 still on your wrist and perhaps 2 in your hand. They would check that at the finish line and you'd be recorded on the results with that finish time, so the time that it took you to complete the race, inclusive of the penalties. If you lost your 3rd band, so you failed 3 obstacles, then you would not have the opportunity to do any penalty obstacles. You would just run through the finish line and you'd be recorded separately on the results under a different list, which would rank below the people who'd completed a minimum or a maximum of 2 fails and have completed the penalty obstacles. So the idea is to reward obstacle completion. It is an obstacle course race, not just a running race. Otherwise, if there was a penalty for every obstacle, Potentially still it will be won by the fastest runners, not by people who could run and complete obstacles. So the fastest people who can complete all the obstacles will always win. So it is always a trade-off between running hard and training for running and training for obstacles as well. So there'll be sort of signs maybe by the obstacles, there'll be rule books beforehand, but there is quite a lot of information to take on. We try and do like a course walk with either the captain or coach or team manager before the race to try and look at some of these, and we share tips and tricks closer to the time as well. Things that aren't allowed, things like unsportsmanlike behaviour, things like littering, all sort of offensive language and stuff like that. Yeah, so these types of things will all be shared beforehand. Kind of needs a picture on those ones. There'll also be guidance like this shared in the rule books closer to the time, which explain what you're allowed to do and what counts as a legal use of the obstacles. So you're supposed to use the obstacle as it's intended. So for example, on this ball, you're supposed to use the ball, not use the rope above the ball. So there'll be a guide like this with images beforehand for you to check, and there will be marshals or technical officials at the obstacle. And if you do something like the images on the right, then you would lose a wristband even if you hit the bell and completed the obstacle, because it wouldn't be a kind of a proper completion. There's things in place and things being developed to try and kind of develop this and have a way of just it not being possible, rather than somebody having to make a call and you trying to not do it, because sometimes there's been cases where athletes don't think they've done it because they're obviously not trying to do it, but they have done it and then they've been called out from it, and it's something we're trying to avoid in general. So it's just good when you're training to kind of bear those things in mind as well, that you're not sort of making it easier and therefore harder. Anyway, those ones aren't loading very well, but they'll be all confirmed in the actual one. Proper ones closer to the time. Okay, that's just general OCR rules for kind of competitions. Most of the UK things that we have will also, like the rule books that we have before big events in the UK, will also share that kind of information as well. So I think I've covered quite a lot of different things there. I think maybe we could spend some time on any questions that people have. So feel free to just unmute yourself or raise your hand or find something in the chat. We're keen for this to be a question and answer rather than just information thrown at you. But maybe you've realised something that you didn't.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. I've got a little query. I've registered my son and paid for the European Championships. But upon receipt of acknowledgement, it's got him in the correct category, saying that he's in the youth category 10 to 15. But then as I go down the rest of the form, some of the details, it's then put him in the next category up, junior, 16 to 19.
Okay.
How old is he currently?
He's currently 15, and at the time in June he'll be 15. So I've selected the youth category, which is the 10 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
But then as it goes down the actual form,
the confirmation of booking, or
yeah, confirmation of booking. It's puts him into the next category up of 16 to 19 junior.
Yeah, so what it might be, he might just fall in that little anomaly slot. So when they I think in terms of European, when they hit 16, it becomes age as of the 31st of December. So because when does he turn 16?
He turned 16 in August.
Yeah, so I think probably because he turned 16 in August, the system will put him into the older category. But if you email national team email address, I can raise it with the organisers and just make sure that he's in the right category for his age on race day.
Okay, right. Okay, so and what the national team email address is that who's been emailing me with the information already, is it? Yep,
Yeah.
brilliant. Lovely,
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are all registrations still pending validation? No, some of the people that are registered earlier will have had their entries validated now. I would imagine that they are, because they're on the cusp of a price rise, their registration numbers will be very, very busy. So it would just take the team a little bit longer to go through each registration, make sure the medical form has been uploaded, make sure the entry is a valid entry in terms of its qualification criteria, and it just might be taking the team a little bit longer to get through them. But they will all be done, and they will all be done in time. If we get to the point of sort of April, May, and you still haven't had anything, then get back in touch and we'll chase them up. But I should start getting a list of registered athletes, and we can just double cross check those across and just make sure that everybody that has registered is on their list. In terms of the spreadsheet with the little NF, is that for Grace, Luke? Luke with us. It could just be sometimes the names are typed slightly differently on the form, and it may be that she's had the it's for you, maybe that the form has been ticked but it just hasn't come across. I'll have a look, I'll make a note. They will all be done, so even if you have an NF currently, I will go through and just keep sanity checking that everybody that has, like I say, on it might say yes on another name. It does a weird sort of like algorithm sometimes. If it for some reason sees a name typed differently, it doesn't always come through. But if you've got your name 2 or 3 times, it might say yes on one, but it might not have anything on another. But I'll double check it and I'll make sure that there is a yes on there.
Perhaps you could just talk through the medical certificate part, Dawn, for European Championships.
Yeah, so we had a requirement last year that everybody had to get a medical certificate. In Europe, it's very, very standard procedure for everybody to have a medical declaration signed by their doctors and even have ECGs and things when they compete. And this was certainly a requirement for last year, and it was a requirement in Hungary, which caused a huge amount of cost to our athletes. So we have spoken to the European Obstacle Federation, and they are now aware of the challenges that we face in the UK in terms of doctors not wanting to do medical certificates and things like that. So what they have agreed is that there is a self-declaration medical form which is on the OCR European Championships website. If you go on, I think in my memory it is information and information for athletes, and then you scroll down and there are 2 documents. There is one document which asks you to have an ECG and have it signed by the doctor. And you are more than welcome, if you have a very happy doctor that's happy to sign that, and there isn't a significant cost involved, and it's something that you want to do for your own peace of mind, then go down that route. If, however, your doctor wants to charge you, something like £200, £250 for the privilege, there is a self-declaration form. So if you print that off, sign it off, and that will have to be for everybody. So under 16s and over 16s will all need to have that document. So yes, Sarah, they will not validate any entries without that medical certificate being uploaded. And that also goes in line with the competitive team race. If you decide to group up and do a competitive team race, you will need to re-upload your medical certificate for each competitive person racing as well. And just while I'm on that note, it is worth noting that the team race for Portugal is 16 plus. Previous years, we have been able to have junior teams, but unfortunately for this year, they have said it's 16 plus, and I suspect it's to do with the carries and things, just to streamline it and make it easier. There is an opportunity, though, for the juniors to take part in the team race in Sweden. So all is not lost. Even though they can't do it in Portugal, they will be able to do a team race in Sweden if they want to. Let's have a look. I'm just having a look. Is my 16?
Thank you, Tim, that is the declaration medical form link. Thank you.
So is my 16-year-old junior eligible for the short course, standard course, or both? They are eligible to compete in the short course and the standard course. However, they will need to have a valid qualification for both. So if they have a valid qualification, both the short and the standard, then yes, they can register for the short and standard. If they only have a valid qualification for the short course, they have the opportunity to qualify. I think they would have an opportunity at Tartan Warrior, at one of the Spartans, at the Super, and there is also potentially an opportunity for them with coach support, an agreement for them to compete in the British Standard Championships as well. But if they don't have a qualification and they're not going to get qualified, then take part in the open race. They get all the same experience. We've got a couple of juniors who are going to go and do the open race in Portugal just to get some experience. They've just hit that age group. So they're going to go out on the standard course. It's no bands, no pressure, and just go and experience the course. It's go and experience the distance and go and experience the different obstacles, because they are significantly harder on the standard route than what they will find on the short course. And it's much cheaper to enter in the open course as well.
Some people even do that as if they're focusing on the standard course, for example, they might enter open on the short course, which is usually the day before, which is one way to get some practice on some obstacles, because that's not allowed at the competition. So you arrive at the competition and you won't be able to touch any obstacles unless you're taking part in a race. Okay, any other questions?
Oh, some more.
Yes, you can upload the medical self-certification form.
Yeah, you can either upload it when you do your registration, or you can email it to, I think you can just email it to info@European Championships, and they will tag it to your, they'll then tag it onto your application. And it's worth noting that I uploaded my medical certificate from Italy last year, and it was fine. They accepted that and they validated my registration with the medical certificate I had from Italy. So if you did compete in Italy, that's probably the easiest way of doing it. Just upload that form that you had, and that should cover those bases.
It's sort of quite normal for them to take weeks to months to do the validation of the entry. So they probably do it in batches. It's humans.
Will parents need to be part of the opening and closing ceremony with under 18s? You don't have to be. We have agreed with World Obstacle as sort of a get around. So typically the opening and closing ceremony is just for the athletes. But we have agreed by means of the supporters top, which you'll see on Surrages. The supporters top is not branded with an athlete's name, it just says team. So it's essentially your top will say Team GBR. And that will allow you, if you wanted to come with your minor, and we did that mainly for parents that want to be with their kids and just experience it with them. You can buy a supporters top, and you can then be a part of the opening and closing ceremonies. You will have to adhere to the other guidelines, so we wouldn't want you turning up in a pair of jeans, etc. So you would need to still wear, the black trousers, black shorts, or the other leisure wear. But we will also have we have designated safeguarding and welfare officers at the championships, so your minors will be looked after at all times, and they will be with all of the other athletes. So if you don't want to join them, they will be perfectly safe with us.
Hey, for those of us that are kind of new to the national team, do you have any intel on the kind of obstacles to expect compared to a Spartan race?
Yes. Sorry, I actually just deleted a lot of those from these slides, but I can show you a few. Have you ever watched any things on YouTube? That's a good place to start. There's some really good summary videos from the European Championships from Italy in 2022 and 2024 and Hungary in 2023. So if you were to just Google, I think YouTube has a OCR European Championships page. So you'll be able to go back a few years and look at some of those. It might be quite a fast-paced video, but I also remember on their page, they did a couple of years ago, might have been in 2022, have step-by-step kind of video rules for different obstacles. The obstacles will be changed depending on who's hosting, and it hasn't been hosted by Portugal before. Spain is nearby, but it's not the same, and Spain will be hosting in the future. And so really we don't know until we see the rule book which exact obstacles will be, but expect them to be a more different combinations of rigs. So for example, hopefully you can see the slides again, it's just going to load. This is the high to low rig. This was at the World Championships last year, and it's got a selection of sort of hand only elements which are suspended quite low to the ground, which makes it challenging, and then you have to go up, and then sometimes you might come back down again. These ones are more like climbing holds on the side there, then there's some sort of spaceship shaped ones.
Are you allowed to use figure 4 on the low rig?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah, as long as you're not touching the ground or using the structure, you can use any technique. Yeah.
Okay, great.
What have we got here?
Yeah, the generic ruling is generally where structures are over 2 meters, your feet must remain below your head. So that's kind of the general rule of thumb with that one. It's worth noting or worth shouting out a couple of training centres. So generally the training centres we've got around the UK are really, really hot as soon as we get that rule book. And as soon as we get a snippet of the rule book, even if we're not technically allowed to share it with athletes, we may share it with some of the training centres so that the coaches are able to rig up. And so Rumble were very good last year, as were the PT Barn, with setting up some training days. And I think PT Barn have already got a couple of their, they call them Road to Worlds, very specific days, and they have specific days for juniors and they have specific days for adults. And Rumble have got a pre-Worlds and a pre-Euros training session set up online for juniors. So they were great. You know, we set up things like spaghetti. Trying to think what else they set up. They set up all sorts of different obstacles to replicate what was in the rule book. So we'll post those out as soon as we get the rule book, and as soon as we get those training days, we'll get those posted out on the WhatsApp groups so that you can get everybody booked in.
See if I can find something useful for you. Chat.
Opening ceremonies tend to be on the evening, so they're normally around about 4. We tend to meet. It will be after all of the 100 meter qualifying is done. So the 100 meter qualifying will take part on the Thursday, and then on the Thursday evening will be the opening ceremony.
Brilliant, thanks, Dawn.
Let's link to the right channel on YouTube and get lost in some of those videos. All right, any other questions? We missed anything? We will be having another kind of formal call when we do have, often we have a call when we go through the rule book together for people who perhaps haven't had a chance to yet, or would just like some extra kind of help and support from the rest of the national team. We do that as we often have a captain, a vice captain, team manager, and sometimes a national coach as well, to help us kind of tackle it beforehand. And we do that on a call like this as well. So we'll try and get those times to you when they're appropriate and set up, and that will be kind of invited athletes who have entered on that call.
Yeah, Mira, there are quite a few that have some reason slipped into Albania. So what I would say is to try and encompass everybody is, if you've got any issues with your registrations whatsoever, send an email to the national team email address, and then I will go through and I'll pick them all up one by one. Anything like that is to do with registrations specifically, if you send that to the email address. Things like that tend to get a little bit lost sometimes when they're in the WhatsApp groups. If it's just generic questions in the WhatsApp groups, then fire away. That's what they're there for, and I'll try and answer them as promptly as I can. But anything specifically athlete related in terms of registrations, yeah, send that off to the national team email address. And we had one yesterday that was exactly the same. One of the other 100-meter athletes was registered as Albania, and they sorted it out overnight, so he's done now. So yeah, if there's anybody else that needs switching and changing, then yeah, ping that over and I'll deal with that.
Okay, you're welcome, Jane. Okay, we'll leave it here. If you want to hang on just for a minute, if you've got something more personal to us, then me and Dawn will hang on for just a minute. But thanks for your time, everybody. And make sure you meet those deadlines for the kit just coming up at the end of this month, or qualification if you can. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Lovely. Thanks very much for that. It's been very helpful.
No worries. Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks.